The topic today is about auto layout. With the more variations of screen resolutions on both Coca application and also of course iOS devices, auto layout becomes more and more important. As I have shown you earlier, you could set the auto layout on the storyboard or your lib file. But today, besides setting to the storyboard, I'm also going to introduce to you the way to set it programmatically. And also, the other part would be with the use of a third-party library. So right now, let's start with the way that we introduced before, which is the most intuitive way, setting it up on the storyboard. Say now, I have created this basic and template application, and I'm going to add a view to it. Say this is the custom view I want, and all I want to do is simply set it to the right side here, and then add it with auto layout. Say it attached to the top, right and bottom of the super view, which is the layers label, because sometimes you may have several different controls or view elements. It will try to find the nearest one. Besides that, I'm going to set the width constraint to it, so it's always with this width. There is no warning about the auto layout, so it is having enough constraints to form this view on top of the super view. In order to show this element more clearly, I want to set like the background color for it. I will use a CA layer to set the background color. So since I don't want to subclass it, I could simply drag it as an IP outlet here. Call it right view, and then set it within the view.denote method. Right view dot once layer to true. Now the layer is added to the NS view, and then I could do right view dot layer dot background color equals to green color. So it shows like that, and if I resize the window, since the top and bottom constraints are working, this right wheel will hold on the right side all the time. Then let's try to set another view on the left hand side, which is having the constraints set up programmatically. Now I put it on this side, and then also create this IP outlet and call it left view. Also, I first set it with the layer so that I could change the background color. To red color. If I run the application now, as you could expect, it is showing the red color view on the left side. But if I resize the window now, since I don't have the auto layout set up, so it is not snapping to the bottom. In some cases, say if I create one more wheel here, let me call it center wheel. And this time I'm not creating in the storyboard as well. I just create the wheel in code and then add to the parent wheel as sub wheel, and I will set the frame here as well. So it shows up like around this position, and then y is 0. I will set width and then the height, say 100. I will set this as layer back as well, and change the background color to blue. And now I'm going to add this wheel using as sub wheel. So I'm having at least 3 wheels here for comparison. Now blue wheel appears at the bottom when I set y to 0. Because in Coca application, actually the point coordinate system starts with the bottom left, which is different from iOS devices that starts from top left. So be aware of it. Okay, if I resize the window now, it is sticking to the y equals to 0, so it sticks to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is to have these wheel sticking to top and bottom, of course the center wheel as well. And I'm going to use NSLayoutConstraint to set the AutoLayout properties programmatically. First, I am defining this as bottom left constraint equals to NSLayoutConstraint with this initializer. It's a bit long, so how about I switch the window and then create it like this. The usage of the non-initializer of our NSLayoutConstraint would be setting the constraint for the current item with a particular attribute and set up with a relation related to the other wheel component. So in this case, I am setting up the layout constraint for left wheel. So I put left wheel here. And then the attribute, since I am setting a bottom constraint, I can say to bottom. The relation, I'm going to use equal because I want the left wheel's bottom equal to the parent wheel bottom. So the two items, I could set it with wheel, which is the parent wheel here. The attribute would be bottom. For the multiplier, it is a value that multiplies the constant here and apply it to the relationship. For instance, I could put it as 1.0 and constant with 0. After defining the constraint, I need to apply the constraint. And in this case, I'm applying it to the parent view, since the parent view will give the authority to the subview on how to lay out based on this constraint. So I need to view.add constraint and set it with this bottom left constraint. Okay, now let's run the application. If I resize the window now, oh, now there is a problem. It is kind of fixed right now. The bottom constraints sticks to the left view's bottom, while the frame size of the left view is set up in Storyboard. It is not resizable at the moment, and then I kind of having the fixed height for the whole window application. It may be fine at the moment, as that's the content I want to display, but in some other situations you may want to allow the user to resize your window, and this will block our operation in resizing. This is not good. So how about we first comment it out and try similar thing for the center view and see what will happen. In this case, I'm defining a top constraint. Let me just call it top center constraint as well. And then setting it up like what we did before. The item this time will be center view. The attribute will be top equal to views top multiplied by 1 and constant to be 0. And then we'll add constraint to the top center constraint and run the application. So this time, as you can see, the center view is having its top sticking to the top of the super view. But again, this time, it doesn't allow us to resize the window in terms of height. So it is also not good. Especially for this case, if I have two constraints here switching on at the same time and run the application, you will see there will be constraint conflicts appearing because right now, as we all know, the current height of the left view is not shown. I mean, some parts of it are hidden as the window is now quite short. So we want a better way to set up the constraints. Especially, we don't want to write a long line in order to just set up only part of the auto layout. As you can imagine, if I'm setting the full size of the auto layout, I will need 4 times the code that I had here. So this lead me to introduce a third-party library. This is the library called SnapKit, which I can show you first by seeing the GitHub repo. And it has almost 5,000 stars, which means it is a very popular library. And let's look at the documentation. on how to use this lab kit. After installing it, the way to run the auto layout and set it up is just like this. Immersion box here will be the subview, and then after adding to the super view, you can set something like this, or even put it all together into one line like this, and you are all set. I'm going to show you how to install this lab kit into our application using the way of embedded framework tomorrow, and after that I will show you how to use it in action. If you are interested, I will also recommend you to import the library using one of these dependency manager, which can save you a lot of time in importing, and of course also keep up to date. So I will see you tomorrow.